Ever thought about moving to Maine? Maine is the kind of place a person moves to when they're done with people. Quiet towns, rocky shoreline, cheap land in places, and enough trees to disappear into. One dude did it for 30 years. I'm not even exaggerating. But Maine has some things you should know about that you won't find on AI relocation videos. They always talk about the same stuff: winter, seafood, maple syrup. You know all that, no reason to talk about it. If you run across one of those channels, feel free to leave a comment that says, "Hey, Briggs said F you." But there's places in Maine where the state actually tells you not to eat deer. There's other parts where you can't murder forest creatures on the Lord's Day. And if you buy the wrong piece of waterfront property, you will discover that you bought a view, not part of the Atlantic Ocean. So before you start dialing up realtors in Maine, buy a cabin in the woods, and start dressing like an REI mannequin, here's 10 things you really need to know before you move there. Number 10, parts of Maine are straight up toxic. Maine has designated areas where officials recommend that you don't eat the deer or the wild turkeys at all. All right, I know, it's a little dramatic, but it's a pretty cool picture, kind of gross and funny at the same time. Enjoy it. Back to the video. Because testing has found that they have those forever chemicals in the animals. The affected zones include portions of communities like Fairfield, Unity, Albion, Freedom, and others. The contamination is tied to the years of spreading of municipal and industrial sludge on farmland. But imagine buying that patch of woods so you can go hunting and then find out the state said, whatever you do, don't eat that deer. But it's in season. Yeah, but it's got sludge in it. On top of their toxicity, 1 out of every 10 Maine wells has too much arsenic. Yes, that number comes straight from the Maine CDC. Naturally occurring arsenic gets into underground water from Maine's geology, and water can look and smell and taste perfectly normal while containing arsenic. Private well owners are responsible for having their water tested. That's on you, Homer. So yeah, in Maine, the scary thing coming out of your well might not be bacteria. It's literally arsenic, everyone. Arsenic, you know, a go-to poison for assassins since the Dark Ages. Now here's one more you should know about. This happens in a lot of states, but kind of big in Maine. At least 1/4 of Maine's homes tested have had radon problems. Yes, Maine's officials say radon problems occur throughout the state, and at least 25% of the homes tested have shown problems with it. It also has another twist to this one. Radon can enter the house from a private well. It escapes into the air when people are taking showers, running faucets, washing their clothes, or simply using the dishwasher. So just when you thought Maine had enough toxins, it gets better. We already talked about the radon, the forever chemicals, the arsenic, but did you know Maine basically has a mercury warning on the entire freshwater fish menu? Yeah, Maine's statewide guidance tells pregnant, nursing women, women who may become pregnant, or children under 8, basically, if you can't ride a roller coaster, don't eat the fish in Maine. You ever notice those are the questions they ask you before they let you go on the roller coaster? Are you pregnant? Are you thinking about becoming pregnant? Are you under this tall? Same rules apply, and both might make you vomit. So Maine has thousands of beautiful lakes. Unfortunately, the state has essentially put a mercury warning label on the fish in all of them. All right, enough of the toxic stuff. Number 9, because you always dreamed of becoming a lobster man. So you're moving to Maine because you've always dreamed about becoming a lobster man. Get in line, literally. This is one of those weird things people see on TV in the form of like a fake reality show, and their internal dream machine goes to work. Next thing you know, your family's giving you funny looks every time you bring up moving to Maine. Now, the same thing happened with storage wars. Every jackaloon with a minivan and a pickup started cruising storage facilities looking for an auction and a new catchphrase. Well, it's not that easy to become a Maine lobster man. Maine's lobster fishery has a limited entry system. New commercial lobstermen generally have to do an apprenticeship that includes 1,000 hours and 200 fishing days. And depending on the lobster management zone, completing the apprenticeship can still land you on a waiting list before you get full access. So you can move to Maine tomorrow, but becoming a Maine lobsterman may take a little bit longer, because apparently the lobsters have a stricter immigration policy than the United States. I know what all these people are thinking. They see these guys out on the open ocean by themselves, and they get this feeling of freedom that they haven't had in decades because they've been working in an office. I get it. It's very appealing. Sadly, it would probably be easier if you just bought a Harley and hit the open road. Get your freedom there. Number 8, the state snowplow can murder your mailbox and not have to replace it. That's right, if your mailbox gets run over by one of the state or county or city's snowplows, you're shit out of luck. Maine's Department of Transportation mailbox policy states that roadside mailboxes are installed at the owner's own risk. If one is damaged during highway maintenance operations, the property owner generally isn't entitled to replacement or compensation. Every mailbox therefore spends winters staring down the road, knowing eventually an orange truck is coming to end its life. One guy actually took him to court because he put, first of all, he painted his mailbox orange and it still eventually got destroyed. Then he put blinking lights on it and it still got hit. I think he did a few other things and eventually he takes them to court, basically trying to say there was conspiracy, and they just referred him back to the mailbox policy. You know, that guy went home after losing that and started looking up things on Google, like what's the strongest metal? He's gonna make it out of titanium and just plant it on its lawn with a girder 6 feet into the ground and just wait for the snowplow to come by. You know he'd end up back in court for that one though. Pulls out his own rules. Any state snowplow hitting my titanium mailbox isn't entitled to replacement or compensation. After that, that's the type of thing that makes the state or whatever county stop plowing the street because you're a problem and now your neighbors are all pissed off at you. They have a meeting about you and your mailbox at the school late at night. Good times. Number 7, no killing on Sunday. That's right, hunters moving to Maine discover that deer have Sundays off. Maine law generally prohibits hunting wild birds and animals on Sunday. The Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife state it plainly, Sunday hunting is illegal. So you're the apex predator 6 days a week. The rest of the time, you gotta let them, eat your grass, eat your flowers, and swim by you at the lake with a smirk on their face. Now, this ban started way back in 1840, and you might think that it was because, they wanted something to do with religion and no killing on the Lord's Day or something weird like that. No, it gave private landowners and non-hunters 1 day a week to use the woods safely. Because of this, a lot of landowners allow public access to their private property because they know Sunday is quiet. They'll let you go for a hike on their property. They don't care because they know no one's going to shoot you, at least unless it's some guy that doesn't have a calendar or he's an idiot and doesn't follow the law. But for the most part, you're safe in Maine woods on Sunday. Doesn't matter if it's, duck season or deer season, whatever. You and all your furry friends can go out in the woods and have a good time and not worry about getting shot by mistake. I don't know, officer. I thought it was a real bear. He came towards me. I shot him. The cops all, he's pink. Now, some hunters have actually thought this was illegal and against the Constitution of the state and they should be able to do this, and yada, yada, yada. So they've been to court several times, and finally the Maine Supreme Judicial Court ruled that the Sunday ban is fully legal and that the recent Right to Food Amendment doesn't overrule or change the Sunday hunting ban. Maine and Massachusetts are the last two states with total bans on Sunday hunting. Yeah, hunters sometimes get mad because they can't do things. I remember years ago there was a law in Kansas when it first started. I think it was Kansas had put a ban in place that it was illegal to shoot rabbits from a moving boat. And a guy actually left a comment, said I should make a video about that. In that video, I said I'm gonna make a t-shirt that said, high-powered speedboat rabbit murder is not a crime. And I made a t-shirt, wore it for a long time, and people are like, what the hell have you gotten yourself into now? Number 6, you are the trash man. In parts of rural Maine, garbage day means putting your garbage in your car and driving it someplace. Yeah, you get to drive your garbage around for a little bit, a little road trip with the garbage, smells of coffee grounds and tuna fish. Yeah, it's a good time. Many smaller Maine communities rely heavily on transfer stations rather than conventional curbside collection, meaning residents may haul their own trash and recyclables to the municipal facility, basically taking your own trash to the dump. A girl I went to school with lives up in the mountains of California in a little town called Quincy. And when she first moved there, she was taking their cans down to the street because she paid for trash service. And her next door neighbor, an older woman, goes, what are you doing? She goes, you could just take that down to the dump yourself for free. And she said, well, I'd rather pay for it. I don't want to carry it around in my car. The old lady goes, oh, aren't you fancy? She's all, I never thought paying for trash service was fancy. She's a high school teacher up there. I don't know if she takes her trash to the dump yet, or if she's still fancy. Anyway, so make sure you don't have to haul your own garbage before you move into that cute little Maine small town. Because few things make a Subaru feel less outdoorsy than loading up 3 bags of kitchen garbage into the back of it on a Saturday morning. Number 5, Maine's got a lot of wilderness. Now, when you look at total wilderness by the states, California and Alaska have the most, meaning the most land that doesn't have cities or anything like that. They have the most because they're largest. But the ones that have the highest rate of their land being taken up by forest and uninhabited is Maine and New Hampshire, Maine being the highest. New Hampshire has 83.04% of their land mass is covered by forested area with no homes, no cities, no towns, no roads. Maine, on the other hand, is 89.06% of their land is taken up by trees, basically. If you want to get away from human beings, this is where you go. This is how vast it is. Like I had said earlier about the guy that lived for like 30 years without any human contact, that happened in Maine, and he was a hermit that decided to kind of drop out of society around 1985. He finally got arrested. Not because he was a hermit, it was because one of the ways he, lived his life was during the off season, he would break into people's cabins knowing that they're gone and steal food or whatever he needed. And he'd been doing this forever. It was a pretty good gig for quite a while, and then they had this thing happen. It's called video cameras and security cameras. Yeah, they figured out who he was. Went and finally collected him from his little camp where he had been living for decades. But in Maine, the unrecognized territory encompasses large areas that don't have ordinary municipal governments. Services normally associated with the town can instead involve state agencies, county governments, and the Land Use Planning Commission. You can move somewhere so rural that even your town decides not to exist in Maine. Number 4, buying an ocean view might change. So let's say you spend all your money and you buy a really nice house on the coast in Maine. You've got a perfect view, maybe of a little rocky coast in an inlet or something like that. You enjoy it, you have coffee out on the deck, you take walks along there, you move some chairs down by the edge of your property so you can get a better look of the ocean and your view. Then one day some boats pull up. And they start kind of commercial fishing in a way. And then they're back again, and they're back again, and they're pulling stuff out of the water. You don't know what's going on. Well, Maine can issue standard aquaculture leases for shellfish, finfish, or seaweed operations covering as much as 100 acres for a term of up to 20 years, provided the application satisfies statutory criteria concerning navigation, fishing, and other uses, meaning someone could set up cages for the lobster or whatever right out in front of your house, and you got to deal with that. Now, this might not bother some people, but reading some articles, apparently some people get a little irritated by this, especially when they spent millions on the home and they have this view and they want to, bring their friends over and impress them with the view, and there's 2 dudes pulling up lobster traps, cursing and clanking on stuff. That might make some people mad, especially if they spent millions on the piece of property they have. Because the property itself isn't really worth it. It's the view that makes it worth it. Now, is this one a big deal? Absolutely not. Will it bother some people? Absolutely. Just one of those things you should know. Number 3, cheap wooded land can come with a tax trap. Now this one's for anyone thinking about buying some land near woods in Maine. This is something the seller or real estate agent will tell you about, but it's good to know this before you get moving with big plans. Maine's tree growth tax law gives forest owners a big property tax break, but there's a catch. The land is supposed to stay forested and be managed for growing and harvesting timber. So it's a working forest. And eventually, someone's going to come by and take down your trees. It's still your land, but it's really the trees. If they're in the program, they're not yours. If you buy property already in the program and decide to clear it, build on it, or use it for something else, Maine can hit you with a pretty hefty penalty. Depending on how long the property's been enrolled, that penalty can be 20 to 30% of the difference between its reduced tree growth value and its normal market value. So that was a lot of mumbo jumbo. Let me explain it to you this way. Let's say you buy a house, but you find out that the guy was enrolled in this program and he's got 6 years to go. You really want to build something on that property and knock down those trees, but you got to deal with the state of Maine. Their basic plan is you could ride it out for the 6 years, or you could pay us a good chunk of change and we'll go away. That's how it breaks down with the state. So that gorgeous 30-acre wooded property may be cheaper to own than you expect, but it also comes with an invisible note from the previous owner. Enjoy the woods, just don't get any big ideas. Number 2, a refinery in the basement. Now this one's gonna seem weird if you didn't grow up on the East Coast or in New England. It's still a rarity to this day, but it's a thing. New England has some of the last remaining households that use heating oil. Yes, it's actually oil pumped into the basement of your house where you have like this little heating system that keeps you from turning into a popsicle during the winter. Now, if you're from outside New England or the Northeast, you probably have no idea what this is. Less than 2% of the homes outside the Northeast and New England have these. And they're kind of weird because a guy with a truck comes up and pumps oil into your basement, and you got to pay for that, just like any utility. But there's a lot of maintenance involved, and you got to check your oil, like you're checking the oil on the car to make sure you got enough oil to get you through the blizzard coming, stuff like that. Now in the Northeast, only about 13 to 15% of the homes actually rely on heating oil, where you find a lot of the homes that were built in the 1950s. This was big then, 1940s and 50s. I guess they'd had too many power outages back in the day, so electric heating wasn't as popular as oil. It was a little more dependable. But when you get to New England, that's where all these relics are still going strong. And Maine remains one of the most heating oil dependent states in the country, with roughly half the households using fuel oil as a primary heating source. That means you move to Maine all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, excited to get your new life started, and you go to turn on the thermostat and you realize it's a little different and you figure out why. You don't have an electrical or gas furnace, you got an oil drum in your basement with a machine attached to it. One of the biggest problems with this, oil fluctuates in price in a big way, so you're looking at this going, maybe I could put it off for another month and see if it drops. And if your heating oil tank leaks, you got a whole new hobby. If you do have a leak, Maine requires you to tell them right away. A finished basement smells very different after 100 gallons of heating oil decides it wants an open floor plan. Even though much of the country, it's like a rarity to find one of these homes that uses heating oil. In the Northeast, it's not as rare, but in Maine, you have above average chances of finding a home that requires heating oil. 59% to be exact. New Hampshire's right behind them with 43%, and Vermont has 40% of their homes using heating oil. Heating a house with oil is cheaper than standard electric resistance heat like baseboards, but modern electric heat pumps are significantly cheaper than oil. So make sure you check before you buy the house. I mean, these are all things you'll find out when you buy the house. The realtor is going to tell you, but you don't want to get your heart set on a house and then find that out. And then you're kind of like, well, do I even want this house now? Should I look for another one? Just put that on your list of things to check before you fall in love with a new house. All right, before we get to number 1, what do you think? Would you live in Maine? I mean, it is a beautiful state. It's got a lot going for it, but has anything on this list turned you off of Maine? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, it's got crime. It actually has crime. Maine is one of those states that is always in the top 5 for the lowest crime rates, along with New Hampshire, Vermont, and Wisconsin. Yeah, believe it or not, outside of Milwaukee, there's really not a lot of crime in Wisconsin. At least no epidemic thing like it's really horrible and, you got to avoid this area. But Maine is kind of known for being one of the safest states to live. And that's why a lot of older people that live there, they stay there because they're used to having no crime and they want to keep it that way. I've done several videos about this and they are always either 1 or 2. It's going to be Vermont or Maine is going to have the lowest crime rate every single year. Very consistent. I've been making these videos for almost 10 years and that's how it's always been, even before I was making these videos. I mean, you're talking about a state where a guy making a titanium mailbox would probably hit the evening news hard as a major crime. But believe it or not, there are places in Maine that have some crime. The first one on the list is the town of Augusta or city of Augusta. Augusta does have some crime. Most of that has to do with property crime because their violent crime is actually 30% lower than the national average, and their property crime is 132% above the national average, making their total crime come out to being 105% above the national average. Now, is that absolutely horrible? No, but if you're under the illusion that Maine has no crime, this is kind of an eye-opener. One of the biggest problems is they have a pretty good unemployment rate. I mean, the national average right now is 4.9% of the population, and in Augusta, it's only 3.2. So it's actually lower than Maine's average of 4.0, and well below the national average. So that means they got jobs, but they don't have well-paying jobs. jobs. This usually creates a lot of people doing petty theft and shoplifting. And those are property crimes or commercial crimes. They kind of fall in the same category. Are they out doing drive-bys? Are people getting assaulted every week? No, not past maybe a bar fight. That's about it. If you go look at all the towns that would pop up on their worst town list, like Livermore Falls, their violent crime is 64% below the national average, but their property crime is 11% above. And surprise, surprise, their poverty level is 19% above the national average. Their unemployment rate is 8.2%. So that unemployment rate is double Maine's average of 4.0. So they're going to be stealing stuff. That's just how it goes. People find ways to get by, whether through work or cutting corners and stealing. Even Maine's largest city, Portland, does have a little bit of crime, not much, but their violent crime is actually 26% below the national average. So they don't hurt people there, but their property crime is 41% above the national average, giving their total crime rate 30% above the national average. So it is very safe. Your stuff's not as safe as you are. All right, what do you think? Would you move to Maine? Is it your type of place? Let me know in the comment section below if anything on this list kind of turned you off of the Pine Tree State. If you like this video, I know you're gonna like this one. We ranked all the states by the best retirement to the worst retirement, or the other way around. Watch it and find out. Everyone have a great day. Be nice to each other.